To see everybody this evening. Okay, so this week it is Seraphine. It is from actually from France. This is part of this month's art and artists' lives. And I thought Seraphine was a perfect film for this topic. It is directed and co-written by a terrific director. His name is Martin Prevost. It's this film won over 20 major international awards, including 7 French Academy Awards that included Best Film, Best Actress, Best Cinematography, Best Screenplay, Production Design, Costuming, and Music. I mean, this film was just overwhelmed the French Academy. As one can imagine, it's an examination both unsettling and deeply touching of the sources of creativity, the vagaries of renown, and the complexities of relationships. Making a film about an artist, as we've seen before, is not an easy task. Most films about artists delve into the banality and the Sturm und Drang of their development. Look at a film like Lust for Life with Kirk Douglas. I mean, he's eating up the screen during the whole film. Any artist, that's where a director usually goes into their conflicts. Rather than providing an appreciation into the mystery of their work, and this film delves into the mysteries of an artist's work. We see it tells the true story of Seraphine Louis. She was born in 1864. She died in 1942. She was also known as Seraphine of Senlis, and she was born to a mother who was a farm worker who died on Seraphine's first birthday. These are things they didn't cover in the film, but it's important to know because it gives us some background. And she had a manual laborer father who died when she was 7. So she had a sister who took care of her. She first worked as a shepherdess for her sister, and at 17, she became a domestic worker in a convent. And in 1901, she was a washerwoman for families in the town of Senlis. No one really, they knew somewhat of her past, but she was untutored. She painted ecstatic, almost hallucinatory still lifes of flowers and fruits. Her life would have remained hidden to history, but was it not thanks to William Uda? And in that first part of the film, we see the mystery of her art. We see how she created her paints, how she takes organs and uses the blood and goes down to the water, and how she mixes them. It was a really wonderful setting. And Uda was a German art critic. He was a real person, yes, based in Paris, who in 1912 had actually come down to Senlis for some time away from the city. Now, the film is really well documented. A lot of the dialogue naturally is made up, but a lot of the travels, a lot of the meetings of these people were real. And Uda himself was an early supporter and collector of Picasso, and he was the discoverer of and promoter of Henri, known as Le Douanier Rousseau. Rousseau was a railroad clerk who painted these, primitive animals and became popular for that. Uda chanced on Seraphine's work much the way he did in the film. And the people in Senlis either didn't know about or thought of her as a joke, and they thought of her work as a joke. And he was flabbergasted when he sat down to that dinner and he found out who these people were. The relationship between her and Uda is a chaste, complicated love story in and of itself. He was a gay man in a small town a German living in France on the eve of World War One. He, in some ways, was more of an outsider than Seraphine, who are both rooted and confined by their lives in Senli. The relationship between her and Oud, is as I said, chaste. Her work was initially lumped in, if you remember, with naive, what we called naive art of Henri Rousseau and other painters. But Uda rejected that title. He didn't like naive art. Today, she'd be more correctly labeled and celebrated as an outsider artist. Whatever you call her, there was no place in pre-World War I Europe for Seraphine's art, and barely any place for her as a person. Barely any place for her as a person. We saw how that woman, how people treated her as far as the laundry was concerned. They would cheat her out of money, out of a few cents. We saw the woman she worked for, how she was disregarded. But confident of this narrative, the quality of the film, it's a passionate, humorous, and heartbreaking film. And it doesn't rush its revelations until the proper moments in the film. And the story neither condescends or romanticizes Seraphine. In the end, Seraphine is treated, as I said, like a piece of furniture. In her private moments, as we watch her, we sense a yearning in her spirit, an unspoken, it's almost a pagan passion for nature in all its manifestations. The way she bathes, the way she looks at the trees, even when she talks to Uda about the trees, about nature. She paints because of a kind of spiritual compulsion, privately, as if she were a devout member of a religion that she was the only worshiper in. When she goes to the church and she takes the wax, it's almost the giving of the divine for her to be able to use that. And art is not a choice or an option for her. It's a necessity. It's a brutal necessity. It's a compulsion. And it is a spiritual compulsion. And fascinating, and inevitably tricky relationship between these two obsessive people who are united only by their zeal for Seraphine's art. Ironically, both she and Uda, as outsiders, nobody else would realize her talent. And it's ironic because even when he likes her painting, the woman who employed her, notice how they all of a sudden liked the painting. They wanted the painting. He was the expert telling them, and they all thought they were experts. Both Uda and the artist, as I've said, have hidden corners to their lives, secrets. These were secrets as well as failings that made their interaction an intricate and at times difficult one. But, and the director immerses us. He immerses us in the sensual and spiritual dimensions of Seraphine's art as she paints. I love the couple downstairs. She must be painting again, when they hear us singing, and it grows out of this ecstatic engagement with her world. The fruits and flowers in the arrangements that at first they look merely decorative. But as we look closer at the patterns on wallpaper or pottery, that's what they look like, but that on a closer examination are charged with a marvelous and unsettling power. We see serpents, we see almost religious icons. This first part of Seraphine is filmed like a standard piece, albeit with the special attention to the wind and the trees, that Seraphine Louis is seen almost as a misfit mystic. I mean, the sounds in the film, some are eerie, some, the wind, the trees, all of these things. The film jumps ahead, though, to 1927 and Uda's return to Senli. We see the change in technology, the cars. He comes in with a car instead of a horse-drawn carriage. All of these, we see the change in the world. and the village's 19th century rural pace has vanished beneath this rush of technology and move towards industrialization. And Seraphine's paintings have turned wild and brilliant at this point, overflowing with this manic profusion of a disordered mind, seeking its own beauty. Even she admits, if you remember at one point, that they're frightening to her. They're frightening. And then we're in 1930 with the effects of the Great Depression destroying the finances of his patrons. Uda had to stop buying her paintings. The people who were paying for this art could no longer pay for it. They could no longer pay for a lot of the art. And he was at the point, and she was at that point in time beginning to have a kind of psychic break. Remember, she orders the wedding dress. She remembers the lover she once had, and she's going to be married, and how she marches through the village, and she's divesting herself of some of her possessions, and the people, all they could think of, okay, she's nuts. She's gone nuts. And the police come and take her away. In 1932, she was admitted for chronic psychosis in a lunatic asylum with no outlet for her talent. There was no way for her to express herself. And we saw what was going on there. And Uda, but Uda really had no connection because he had to leave. And when he came back and he saw her, he had reported that she died in 1934. But there were reports that she did live until 1942 in that hospital annex, and she died friendless and alone, buried in a common grave. He continued to exhibit her work after she was put away at what was known as the Exhibition of the Modern Primitives in Paris. And in 1937, 38 of her paintings were in an exhibition titled The Popular Masters of Reality, which showed in Paris, Zurich, and New York. At the Museum of Modern Art in 1942, there was a show called The Primitives of the 20th Century again, which exhibited in Paris as well. And finally, in 1945, there was a solo exhibition of her work in Paris, just dedicated to her. So and today her paintings sell in anywhere from the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands. They don't reach the level of the great artists that we're familiar with, but still they sell very well. And she's exhibited in museums around the world. Her art was picked up, much like you'll learn in the next film, in Cézanne et Moi. Paul Cézanne's paintings were rejected in France and Germany. You'll see how they wound up in over 100 museums around the world, how that resulted. And it's the same thing with Seraphine. Her work wound up in museums around the world. You can go as far flung as Manila, and see her work. It's very interesting, but it's all of this comes down to the performance of Yolanda Moreau. It's extraordinary. She showed us how an ordinary life and with an extraordinary artistic ability and eccentric mental states can and probably do exist in the same person. That the same person that has this mental breakdown, a mental break, can still express artistic ability. Now, we know this too with schizophrenics, sometimes express themselves artistically. But she had this irresistible urge to create, which really was the key to who she was. She had nothing else in her life. The closing scene, when he finally gets to that room and she's now in a clean place. She's now, she's become a person again, and she goes outside. It's a symbolic ending, but it's a beautiful one. When she goes outside and she sits down opposite that tree, It's just, you know, she is part of that nature. She has become what she created, in a sense. It was a beautiful poetic moment in the film. Yolanda Moreau is not just, I mean, she's a great artist in her own right. She's a performance artist, and she went on. She's made a few films which she's directed in. She's won many awards for her work. She always plays eccentric characters, as one can imagine, and does a lot of comedic work. She does some dramatic work, but she's very well known in France, and she's been nominated for French Academy Awards before. She's been honored at Cannes for her directing as well as her writing as well as her acting. And here she just this is the performance of a lifetime, as far as I'm concerned. It's really a terrific work, the film itself, into this mystery of art. And I'm glad that, you know, it's not about someone we're familiar with. And yet there are so many artists out there we're not familiar with that have made an impact on the world. And here is one of them. So I hope you enjoyed the film. We're somewhat awed by the film too. And now I'd like to hear what you think about it. So let's get into the conversation. This is the important part. I want to hear what you thought about it. So let's see those hands. Who's going to go first? Who wants to go first? Oh boy, I got to play the fickle finger of fate here. Okay, Jackie, thank you as always.
You know, I do that. I thought it was beautifully filmed. I thought it was awfully long, to be honest with you. And I know that's something you don't like to hear, but I really did enjoy finding out about somebody I actually knew nothing about. The paintings that you saw during the movie were interesting, but when I looked her up afterwards, especially probably her later work, was just a riot of color. And that was really very interesting. So I liked that part.
Terrific. Yeah, I mean, you know, she was, you know, she had no formal training. She had no contact with any other great artist, you know, no tutoring. Yet she knew innately how to make paint. She made her own colors, and that's really the beauty of the art, is the color she creates. You know, another artist who was like that was Jackson Pollock. Although he was trained, he would experiment with paint. He would experiment with colors. In fact, paint manufacturers would create paints for him to work with to see how they would come out on canvas. So, you know, and here we had one that was creating her own paints. It was wonderful to see how she took the blood, how she took all the wax, and creates these things for us. So thank you, Jackie. Arlette?
Unmute. I loved it. I didn't think it was that long a film, and I probably would have watched some more of her life as it went along. But as an artist in the very beginning, like someone mentioned at the very end, you know, how her paintings became erratic and multiplied so much. It has to do with the psyche of her breakdown and all that she was possessing at that moment, and for her to release it. That was her release, was painting. I mean, what did she have in life? Very, very little. And then to think of someone that had nothing, and all of a sudden, how she threw the money when she went to the dressmaker for her wedding gown, she just tossed the money because she was not a worldly person. She didn't understand what was happening as much as Wilhelm was trying to explain to her, which of course to her was a punishment. She could not face the reality because she didn't have a concept. She didn't understand. And to see this woman break down, and how she broke down, the different sections of how she broke down, was unbelievably done. I mean, what a fabulous actress. It was dynamite, absolute dynamite. Bravo. Thank you for sending us this film.
Thank you, all that. Yeah, I mean, it's also, you know, it's not just ecstatic what she does with the color and the art and the repetition. It's also, in a way, an erotic release for her.
Mhm.
You know, she had no one. She didn't have any outlet, as you just mentioned, and this was her outlet. Her art was her only outlet, her only means of expressing herself. And Uda understood that, and really tried to help her. I mean, I love it at the beginning when he puts out the chair for her, and that chair reappears at certain points, but he wants to, have a seat, and she looked, somebody's asking her to sit down. This is a woman that was treated like the chair, and now she's being treated like a person. And I thought it was the beginning of that beautiful relationship between the two of them. And yet he had his own situation. He had a lover who was dying, who was also, by the way, became a well-known painter, whose work himself was well known. And he sponsored a lot of artists at that time, German artists, who had become well known during the period, and whose art was lost. For some of them, their art was lost because through Nazification. Yeah.
I just have one question. Maybe you could answer. Maybe the audience out there can answer. Okay. When she spoke about her first love, all right, I'm just putting that in a category. She's also a very religious woman. And we know that nuns are married to God. Okay. This involvement of this wedding dress. I want to know a little bit of what you think and others thought. What was the symbolism behind it? To have something that she thought about when the thought of her lover, or the one that she loved, could have developed into something. I was trying to figure that out as she went and got
that. I mean, you bring up a very interesting observation. What or who, we don't know who she's talking about anymore. She talked about the young man, but he had gone. I don't think it was him. I think, it was in her mind, obviously, but as you're saying, it's almost like a communion for her.
And she had a bridesmaid, and that young girl.
Yeah, she said, "You'll be my bridesmaid."
Yeah, she knew enough to have a bridesmaid.
Yeah, I mean, it could be wish fulfillment on her part. She wanted all this fulfillment along the way. I mean, when she wanted to buy the house, as you said, money, she had no concept of money, how to spend it, how to use it. And she was just with wild abandon. It was almost like the wild colors of a painting, the wildness of a painting. That's the way she approached the world.
Yeah, well, she felt self-worth all of a sudden, to be able to attain the home, to be able to have that, to live like the world surrounding her had lived.
Yeah, well, to be like the people that she worked for. Yeah, to be like the people she worked for. Yeah, Linda?
Frankly, I thought that was all part of her mental illness. People have hallucinations. It affects the brain, and that's what I thought. I didn't think it was real. Something that she was thinking about, dreaming about.
That's well, yeah. I mean, nobody can negate that. I mean, it is an ambiguity, but it's also the fact that I sit there and I look at it, at the role. I look at what the actor is doing and where the story's going, and one can think, if she had gotten real psychiatric care, what might have happened. That a psychiatrist would have, Freud, whatever, would have gotten to her. They would have put a paintbrush in her hand. I mean, they would have fostered her to create. To find out what is the motivation of her creation, and hopefully, nurture it along. But she was denied that. And she was forced to go more into a psychosis because of where she was put. There were no paints, no brushes, nothing for her to work with, and therefore, pushed more into it. Yeah, Linda.
But don't you think that many artists and creative people are creative because they have some mental issues?
Well, it's well, it's it could be some trauma that from their past that forces them into another direction. It's not necessarily a destabilizing process. For some artists, it's the way they see the world. It's the way they structure. It's Picasso began to see, he began to look at ancient art. He looked and really what he was doing was taking ancient art. He was going back as far as cave paintings and sculpture and reinventing it. Every form of art is a reinvention of the one that precedes it. You build on it. Every trend, every school of art builds on the previous one, and that's what they do. So it's very difficult when someone like Seraphine comes along. What is she? She's not building on anything. She's creating her own process, and it's hard. Do I feel, that every artist is there's something mentally unstable about them? No, not at
No.
all. Not at all.
No.
But
No.
yet for some it's a trauma, it's a love. They are artists, and then they start to express themselves in a particular way because
We're
of what
also
they're seeing in the
different.
world.
Some possess gifts.
Yes, yeah, most of them I think possess the gift of expression in some form. Dora, thank you, Linda. Dora.
Okay, to our next question, I think she thought, at least it was my perception, that she was ready. She said she was ready, and I think she was ready to, like the nuns go, they marry God, when and then she went up the steps. So maybe she was going to the church. She was giving away all her belongings, all the things that she had bought like crazy. She started to be erratic when she bought all those things for her, and she rented the other room, and she knew, because she was going to all those places where they had sorry, where they had a beautiful places where she worked, that they had pictures and they had silver things and all that. So that's why she wanted to do it the same thing. And she was, that was like a turning point when she started to not realize what really life is. That she wanted to buy all this house with I don't know how many rooms, and then she wanted that dress, that special dress, and she was not in the reality. But like you said, maybe if they had a psychiatrist to treat her, then she would have been really very successful. But at that time, it was after the first war, and everything was unstable. I think, I don't know, and maybe at that time what they did was they gave you electroshock for all these people that were not normal, and I felt so sorry for her, for not being able to finally be and so they did not acknowledge her. She never knew that her paintings were really successful. They were in that she had a show and all that.
As it befell a lot of artists from those
Like
periods,
an
but
yeah.
but she was, yes, I mean, in a sense, she was divesting herself of worldly goods as she marched, as she was going, and when the police came to take her away, she didn't resist. She probably didn't even see them as police. They're escorting her.
Yes,
Uh,
and then when they took her beautiful dress and just gave her this, that was a scene, that was a hard scene, when they took her dress and they put this awful dress on
sack.
her. Yeah, and I came to mind that Schumann. Schumann was also put into the great not music. Schumann was put into an asylum also because he also turned, and he was a genius. So a lot of people like maybe, you know, sometimes it was like too much on their head or too much on their life, and then they end up in an asylum or in a psychiatric place, and they were not treated properly. Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you, Dora. Marilee.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I agree that I thought the movie was stunning, but it was so heartbreaking. I
Yes.
was, and I have a dear friend who's an art historian for women in art, and I asked her, did she know her? She said no. And then I did a lot of research because it appalled me
Mhm.
that she was in a common grave, maybe with a headstone, maybe not. There are a couple of conflicting reports.
Yes.
It appalls me that there isn't some women's group for a little bit amount of money that can find her grave and give her the honor of it being a proper. It rips me apart. I tell you it, and it, yeah, that's it. I just can't handle that piece. I
I
tried looking up where she's buried, exactly where. Nothing that I could research showed that point.
Yeah, no, she's buried in a common grave. Nobody really knows. I mean, it is, you're absolutely right. I mean, here is an artist, and thankfully for this director, you know, who brings it alive, shows us, you know, what an ordinary, who was considered an ordinary person, did this extraordinary art and brought it to the world. And it is sad. It is a heartbreaking story. How many artists out there are like that? But yet she is exhibited around the world, and nobody, just as you said, I mean, I have a daughter who's in art, and she didn't know about her at first when I mentioned it when I first did this film a few years ago. So it's true. It's true. This is important. But she's beginning. She has shown up in auctions. Her paintings are available through certain sites. I think there are even prints of her paintings. But yes, I think she, you know, well, think of this as the honor for her. You know, thankfully we've had a chance to see it, and she's being honored here in a way, her life. Thank you, Marilee. Fran.
No, I was going to say the same thing, that I thought she was marrying God.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
She went to the church, she was rubbing that statue, and then she said, I'm ready. I felt that she was marrying God and that she was giving away her earthly possessions, as the nuns would do. And she really wasn't doing anybody any harm. It's a shame they just grabbed her and locked her up, because she wasn't really dangerous, it seemed. But anyway, that's what I thought, that she.
Okay, yeah.
And is at the end, I was surprised that the back door of her room was open and that she was able to go out freely. It was a lovely ending, perfect ending.
I think that was basically
reality,
symbolic. Yeah, that was much more symbolic of her freeing herself, you know, of doing what she couldn't do before when she was wearing the wedding dress, being imprisoned. It was a sense of her freeing herself at the end, is one would hope that's what she did. You know, because we don't know exactly when she died. We don't even have that date. It's purported to be 1942. Who would have thought it was 1934? We really have no idea.
You felt she found peace, though, sitting there.
Yes.
Tree, that
Yes.
this is all she needed, was nature and the tree and the flowers. So
yes, to be one.
It was a very
Yes.
lovely ending, actually.
Thank you. Linda Hawk.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm not on camera tonight, but I had agreed also that that she was wanting to marry God, do the nun thing. She was raised by the nun. I thought it gave us a lot of information on that she's, and what the, you know, I just said now about being ready. She made the decision. She got all dressed up. She kept saying the angels would all be there and everything. So I just was waiting for her to arrive to the nunnery and take her vows, and then the police come and take her away. But that's where my mind went, you know, during the watching of the film. Also,
Okay.
so I agree with the couple that have mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a viable interpretation. I mean, it is open to interpretation. It's a very
Yeah, because there
viable
was,
one.
you know, a lot of clues supporting it, you know.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, it is an ascension for, I mean, there's a lot to read into the scene, definitely. Thank you, Linda. Rachel.
And I liked it very much. I'm sorry, I have a little laryngitis, but I liked the movie. I love the layers of the movie because it talks about relationships. It talks about artists and their mindset. Not every artist, they're not all the same. And even Picasso went through different periods. Even he went through a blue period when he was depressed about, I think his friend died. And so all his paintings were blue. Okay. So it is really a passion and just something very close to her. Hugged a tree, really felt it. She felt nature. She could sit very comfortably in nature. And also Van Gogh the same way. He went out in nature and painted nature too. So it was, and sometimes even when I am upset or something, nature is a wonderful thing. And you saw it not with words, but her mannerisms, the way she hugged the tree, the way she just sat there. You felt her being at peace. And so it had so many layers to this movie, and I really did enjoy it very much. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Also, you know, you really, what you said is interesting within the context of this story, of the film, because she was rejected by people. And nature doesn't judge. Nature doesn't reject. Nature, you know, and that's where she found her solace, was in nature. And that's why all paintings really don't have people. It's about nature. And that's the world she wanted. That's what accepted her, and that's what she accepted in the end. In the end, she literally accepts nature.
And you know what I found strange though? That at the beginning, she could always find a way to make paint.
Yeah.
And I was hoping in the asylum that somehow she would figure out how to make some paint. Even though she didn't have the brushes, she didn't have those, that somehow she could figure it out. You know, I was
Yeah.
hoping for that, but it did not happen.
No, because I think it was very clear in one scene, her reaction as to what was going on around her. These people around her, it was making her excitable. It was making her, you know, they were going after her. And again, it's people, what they were doing to her. And it just messed her up even more. Just messed her up even more. Thank you, Rachel. Marilyn?
Hi,
Okay.
I totally enjoyed the movie very much. And I thought the film showed the great social challenges, I think, for women and artists in the early 20th century. I mean, sometimes we have to remember and take ourselves out of where we are today. And I think the film did a great job showing that. I don't know if you discussed this because I walked away for a little bit, but when Willem kept telling her that she would be having that show in Paris, did you already discuss this? And it never happened. And I was wondering, to me, was this a disappointment that might have added to her losing it a little bit?
Well, sure, it could have. Yes. I mean, you know,
He kept
it
asking
was,
him if it was going to happen, and he kept delaying it. And I
yeah.
thought, well, maybe this helped, put her over the edge. I don't know.
It could have contributed to it. It could have contributed to it. You know, it's without question. I mean, it's just, you know, it's another letdown, you know, and of recognition of, you know, all of these things. I mean, she had no idea when they were showing her art in the town. You know, it was a surprise. And then she realizes people are looking at her work. And thanks to Uda. I mean, nobody ever would have looked at her work if it wasn't for him.
But she was going on such a trajectory where everything was going beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And then when that wasn't going, it was like, was it her fear that she was going to revert to, you know, I don't know. I don't know what she was thinking.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, something might have sparked that down, you know, what had happened. I mean, I thought, personally thought maybe that was one of the things.
It could be. It could be. There's so much there to think about. Yes. Marilyn Raj.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. My field had been many years ago in art, and I was an art lecturer. I never heard of her name. I did a lot of research over the years. But in any case, I respect her work. And I did some research on someone else that you may know about. Her name is Yogai Kasama. And within the past 2 years, she showed the Whitney Museum. She's very, very famous. And Louis Vuitton uses her design. And some of you women may know, you may have that pocketbook, the one that has the geometric designs on it. But in any case, she works in circles and in nature, and her work reminds me very much of this. That's why I did the research.
Interesting. Interesting.
She's 93 and she's still alive, and she lives in a mental institution, but she is allowed to leave, which she does. So this is her choice. And I just wanted to read the quote from her. And she said, "I fight pain, anxiety, and fear each day. Art has become her way of expressing." And so that's why I just felt it important to share that with you, because I saw such a parallel in their lives, and even in the type of art. You know, it was either geometric or it was, you know, flowers. But she was, Pollock was actually influenced by her. And I don't know if anyone else knows her work, but it's worth looking up. It's spelled Kasama.
Yeah.
And again, you know her, right, Shelly?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with her. But and I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a wonderful example of, you know, here's an artist undergoing the same strains, yet having the ability to, you know, because she's, you know, she's in an institution where she's being nurtured, obviously. They let her go out, you know, when she wants. So it's thankfully, you know, she could exist in that. And we do know who she is. And yes, even Louis Vuitton recognizes her art and commercialized her to a great extent. But yes, and she's an interesting looking person when you see her.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. She's very expressive, very expressive. So thank you for sharing that with us. That's terrific. Yeah, it is a great parallel.
One more thing, that in terms of an artist using ferns and herbs, etc., and of course the earth, the Native American artists used that. And also the 16th century, the 15th century, I mean, artists in the past, always, they would take an egg. I mean, they used things from nature.
Yes.
So what she did, not knowing this, but this was her instinct. She knew that she could get things from the ground and utilize that for the paints. So I really enjoyed the film. Yeah,
Thank you.
It was good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dorothy. You have to unmute, Dorothy.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. I wanted to piggyback on what Marilyn had said before about, I thought that but for the depression, things may have been different for her because she was flying high. He was selling her works and he tried to explain to her why the money ran out. And she lived such an insular life. She would never know that. She could never understand that. So it was almost like a reversion to the way she always started. She had no self-esteem. People talked to her as the cleaning woman, and they were very nasty to her. And I think that lack of people to buy her work, she never understood why. She couldn't understand why. And that led to her downfall, I think.
Yeah, it's more rejection. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But she didn't understand it.
No.
She didn't
was-
understand the economy of the time. Right.
Yeah. It pushed her more into that sort of religious, spiritual feeling she had, because that was her only salvation. That was
Right.
her only salvation. Yeah. Thank you, Dorothy.
Good. Okay.
Who else out there? Anybody else? Do I see any hands? Nobody. Nobody.
Hey, I got
Okay.
one.
Okay, good, Rachel.
Okay, also, nobody has mentioned about this, that she was a kind person herself.
Yeah.
Because when he was crying, and she just shut the door, but quietly she said to him, when I'm upset, I go out in nature. And I thought that was such a beautiful moment, because here she is being discarded, like, nobody cares about you, but yet she cares about another person. And remember when he was like drunk or whatever, and he came home, she took off his shoes and she put him in
Yes.
bed and she said, go to sleep, so she was kind. And, it was beautiful to see this person that was rejected by everybody could act kindly to another person.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, it's interesting, because during the film, things are revealed slowly. Even Uda, at first we don't know, that it's his sister that's staying with him. We're thinking, okay, is that his wife? Is that his lover? Who is that? And then we learn a little later on that he was gay. So rather than just throwing everything at us right away, it comes on slowly during the film, so that we're not, because he doesn't want us to judge immediately who these people are. And that's how we see it. We only see how she's treated. We see her as the laundress. We see her alone. She's in solitude most of the time. It's only until that young girl she was friendly with, is her only companion. And that's part of it too, she's separated from society. And that separation pushes her further into her art. Marilyn.
I thought I saw a foreshadowing about Willem, because when Seraphina thought that it was his wife, he said something about, I would never be with a woman. He said something right then at the beginning that my antenna went up and said he's gay just by what he said. So to me, that was a foreshadowing. I was not surprised that he has.
No, it's not surprising.
say
It's
that,
just, it doesn't come out, it's not overt. It's not overt. Yeah. Yeah, he did say something to that. He did say something to that effect. Yeah. Yeah. Fran.
Yeah, I thought she was in love with him, frankly. Not so much that she was just kind, that she really, and when she was quite jealous of the sister until he said to her, I think she thought it was his lover. And that's when he said,
Yeah, that's when he said
he's
that.
my sister.
Exactly.
And that's when he said, I will never marry a woman. And that's when she realized. But up until that point, I think she was he was the only person that was really kind to her, and she was in love with him. That's the way I felt about it.
Well, I don't, I mean, that's, look, love comes in all forms. And I think, I think she didn't understand what he was saying when he said that to her, who he was. But
No,
I
I'm
think that
more
she felt something for him. There was definitely a feeling for him. But there was nothing overt on her part, and certainly not on his part, to lead her that way. But I think, he was her only connection to the world at one point. When he leaves, in the war, we saw also what happened. The deprivation of the war had a great deal. Although it's only passed over in the film, you can only imagine, living with the bombs going off nearby, living in that situation, was great deprivation for her. He wasn't there. He was gone from her life. So that connection to that world was cut off. She was disconnected. And then finally, thankfully, reconnected when he came back. Okay, I saw Arlette.
Hi. Yes, this is in reference to the lady that has laryngitis.
Rachel.
Rachel, hi, Rachel. At the point of where she had put him to sleep and took off his shoes. Remember, Shelly, in the beginning, you told us about her life, that she was raised by her sister. So there was some kind of human contact. And I'm thinking of the sister having put her to bed and to sleep, and there was the relationship. And it doesn't have to be love in the sense of a man and woman or a man and a man. It just be consideration for another human being. That's what was so awesome and beautiful between the two of them.
Yeah. Well, he treated her like a human being, and she reacted to that.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Beautiful film. Beautiful film.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
No,
Dora.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I remember some of the scenes that were so beautiful with nature. One of them was when she climbed into that tree and she just sat there, like this was her entertainment, her feeling okay when she connected with nature. It was beautiful. It was beautifully done.
Yeah.
That was one.
Thank
And
you.
then when she picked out all those flowers
Yes.
for her to make for her painting and all that. It's a lot of nature, and also there was all over. There was all this greenery, all these beautiful. It was beautiful. It was not only it was as beautiful as her paintings. The surrounding, that the filmmaker put on. I thought that was beautiful also.
Yeah, it's also beautiful irony. I mean, the fact that she's taking nature, she's distilling it into this paint, and then recreating it on a canvas. So, she's giving us her expression of nature through nature. And that's what art is. That's what art is. So we're seeing that in the film. Yeah, thank you. Marilee.
Yeah, I think I may have lost I have the dates of the next sessions, but I wasn't sure of the movies. Are those the Cézanne et moi?
Yeah, I was getting to that.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
Yes, in 2 weeks, we will be discussing Cézanne et moi. The et moi is Émile Zola. Cézanne, it is the story of Paul Cézanne and Émile Zola, who were childhood friends, stayed friends through most of their lives on and off. And that's what we'll see in the film, is what their friendship was all about. And when I talk about art, it's not just the art of painting, the art of the canvas, it's also the art of writing. It is the art of letter writing in this case, because as I will tell you again in 2 weeks, this film was well researched through their letters to each other. We see how one followed a path in literature, becoming an icon of French literature, and the other who never during his life was celebrated for his art. Only after his death was he really recognized. Probably is one of the greatest painters of all time. As Picasso said about Cézanne, he was the father of us all. He was the father of us all. But yet, when you see the film, you'll see a life in torment, a different kind of torment than Seraphine was undergoing, which is interesting. Linda, to your point about artists, and we will see that, but it is a wonderful film, beautifully acted, the detail, the cinematography, the music, everything about it, and the performances especially, which I'll go through when we discuss it. But I think you will find it a beautiful. But now I also want to tell you, those who aren't here are going to miss this fact, but stay through the end titles. Stay through the end titles. Don't shut off the film when the titles come on. And if like they do that crazy thing, which I hate, when they put them up in a little box in the corner, sometimes the titles, disappear and they put it, don't let it happen. Click back on it. Make sure you see those end titles, because I will tell you that, I won't tell you what it is, but I will tell you, you will understand not only Cézanne, but you will understand the history of art in that end title sequence. It's a beautiful one, but I will explain it if you don't learn about it, and I know some of you will pursue that, but I will explain it to you when we talk about the film. And it's a film done by a wonderful director. Her name is Danielle Thompson, and she is one of France's most well-known writer-directors. So I look forward to that in 2 weeks. Until then, I bid you adieu.
By the way, the date on that, everybody, is March 27th.
7th, right? Yes. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you for tonight.
Everybody be
look
well.
forward
See
to
you next
seeing
week.
you
Everybody.
soon.
Thank you.
Terrific.
We thank you
Everybody
for
be
picking
well
all
and
these
stay safe.
wonderful movies.
Yeah.